disputing the election. President Donald Trump makes claims about widespread voting irregularities. Still seeking relief. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill continue to negotiate aid for small businesses affected by COVID-19. Distributing the vaccine. What Vice President Mike Pence is saying about Operation Warp Speed. And Prison Journal. Australian Cardinal George Pell is talking about his time behind bars following his conviction and acquittal. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, December 3rd, 2020. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. President Donald Trump reveals today if he still has confidence in his attorney general while asserting his own belief that the election was fraudulent, even criminal. The president also bestows a tremendous honor on a prominent Catholic and takes a stand for the sanctity of life. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, President Donald Trump honored legendary Notre Dame football coach Lou Holtz today. However, he did not have as many glowing things to say about Attorney General Bill Barr and the investigation over alleged voter fraud.
He's a life teacher.
President Donald Trump's presentation of legendary football coach Lou Holtz with a Presidential Medal of Freedom turned quickly into questions over the president's confidence in Attorney General Bill Barr.
Ask me that in a number of weeks from now. They should be looking at all of this fraud. This is not civil. He thought it was civil. This is not civil. This is criminal stuff. This is very bad criminal stuff.
The Attorney General said earlier this week there was no widespread election fraud, certainly not enough to change the election results. President Trump disagrees.
He hasn't done anything, so he hasn't looked. When he looks, he'll see the kind of evidence that right now you're seeing in the Georgia Senate. You know, they're going through hearings right now in Georgia, and they're finding tremendous volumes, so they haven't looked very hard, which is a disappointment, to be honest with you.
Just yesterday, the president released a White House-produced and edited video of a 46-minute speech where he attacked the integrity of the election, saying it was corrupt and fraudulent. Georgia was just one of several states he went after.
They found thousands and thousands of votes that were out of whack, all against me.
Georgia's election implementation manager responded to the president's video.
The president's literally coming to Georgia to campaign for the same two senators that his two former lawyers who are filing lawsuits to contest the election with the same claims the president made in his very long 46-minute video yesterday that have already been debunked. I'm speechless.
In another election development, the president has suffered a setback. The Wisconsin Supreme Court has refused to hear President Trump's attempt to overturn his election loss there. The president had asked the court to toss out more than 221,000 ballots. Also tonight, President Donald Trump released a message on this International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and I'll read it for you off my phone here. It reads in part, "We have fought to uphold the sanctity of life while promoting a culture of respect for the immutable worth and potential of every human being." Tracy?
Okay, thank you so much, Owen. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reporting for us tonight. Last night, Presumptive President-elect Joe Biden says he supports a bipartisan COVID-19 relief proposal circulating on Capitol Hill. Republicans say they may agree to merge that bipartisan proposal with one from Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports. Eric?
Oh, yes, Tracy, the negotiations continue up here on Capitol Hill. We did hear some good news from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi today. She said, quote, that we will have an agreement before the holiday recess on December 11th. But again, what those details are on what the next COVID relief bill will look like are still being ironed out. Meanwhile, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says that he would like the Senate to pass a more targeted bill, a much smaller one than the Democrats, one that President Trump could sign into law.
The targeted second round of paycheck protection that we've been trying to establish since July would help a huge number of small businesses survive to the finish line and help huge numbers of workers keep their jobs. And it could pass the Senate today probably with 95 votes.
Democrats do say that there is need for comprehensive reform with a higher price tag, one that would include money to bail out the transit systems and airlines.
Nobody should be standing in the way of a comprehensive bipartisan relief package to help Americans hold out until they can get the vaccines that we know are coming. They need relief now. And that's why I support the bipartisan proposal.
Democratic leader Chuck Schumer and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi also support that the almost $1 trillion proposal as a starting point for talks. A bipartisan group of House lawmakers say that they won't leave town until the House and Senate reach a final agreement. Again, any COVID relief will also be attached to a $1.4 trillion end-of-the-year spending bill that will prevent a government shutdown by the end of next weekend. Now, if they are unable to get a hold of a COVID relief bill very soon, then they will have to create a temporary spending bill in order to keep the government running into the new year. Tracy?
Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting from Capitol Hill tonight. Thank you so much, Eric. Well, the Trump administration is preparing the nation for vaccine distribution. Today, Vice President Mike Pence discussed the plan with health officials and the CEO of FedEx. At the same time, a pro-life organization says the leading vaccines funded in part by the government are ethical options. Correspondent Mark Irons reports for us tonight. Mark?
Tracy, according to the Charlotte Lozier Institute, most of the leading vaccine candidates funded by Operation Warp Speed did not rely on aborted fetal cell lines in their production. The government initiative was created to accelerate the development and distribution of COVID-19 vaccines. Today, Vice President Mike Pence updated the country.
Help is on the way. We are just a matter, we believe, of days away from when we will begin to distribute tens of millions of doses of a safe and effective coronavirus vaccine to the American people.
The FDA still has to approve the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines for emergency use. That could happen as soon as this month. Now, 3 former U.S. presidents say they'd publicly take a coronavirus vaccine once one becomes available to encourage all Americans to get inoculated: Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton. And some sobering numbers to report. According to Johns Hopkins University, the U.S. recorded a record day for the pandemic yesterday with more than 3,100 coronavirus deaths. Tracy?
Correspondent Mark Irons reporting tonight. Thank you so much, Mark. In Hong Kong today, Catholic business tycoon Jimmy Lai was refused bail and sent back to jail. The 73-year-old appeared in court this morning, but after being denied bail, he now has to wait until his trial in April. Lai and 2 other executives from his Apple Daily newspaper were charged with violating their lease. Hong Kong police arrested Lai and 10 others in a raid on his offices in August. Christian-based organizations in Italy thank the U.S. government for its aid during the COVID pandemic. The U.S. gave nearly $1 million to the community of Sant'Egidio to support Italian families. The Catholic charity has been providing meals and other necessities during the pandemic. They say in recent months, the demand for help has more than doubled. Some Italian media are reporting that Pope Francis called Cardinal Pells this past weekend after celebrating Mass with his new crop of cardinals. The call comes 2 months after the Holy Father met with a former Vatican official and accepted his resignation. Cardinal Pells, who has been stripped of his rights as cardinal, is fighting back against reports of his financial dealings with a lawsuit against an Italian magazine. Cardinal Pells continues to live in the Vatican. A priest who was kidnapped in Nigeria has been released after being held captive for 10 days. Father Matthew Dajo was abducted by gunmen on the night of November 22nd during an attack on the town of Yangogi, where his parish, St. Anthony's Catholic Church, is located. Joining me now on Skype with more details is Father Don Bosco Onyalla, editor-in-chief of ACI Africa. Father, welcome back. Always so good to see you. Archbishop Ignatius Kaigama of Abuja has been appealing for Father Dajo's safe release. What did he have to say today? And also, what do we know about Father's ordeal and who may have been responsible for it?
So, yes, thanks for having me, Tracy. The Archbishop announced actually yesterday on December 2nd about the release of his priest, Father Matthew Dajo. He was a parish priest. He is parish priest of St. Anthony's Parish in Abuja, Archdiocese in Nigeria. And he was abducted 10 days ago. That was on the 22nd of November. And from an account from a priest, a fellow priest in the Archdiocese, Father Kevin, there are gunmen, unidentified ones, who scaled the wall of the parish fence where the parish priest stays. And then he entered the compound and was able to access the bedroom of Father and whisked him away with them. And it's been 10 days of ordeal for Father. What we know is that the security officers announced for a manhunt for the abductors, but behind the scenes were negotiations for a ransom. And we are told by multiple sources that the ransom that was being asked for was for thousands of dollars, in hundreds. And the father was released yesterday, yes, thank God, safely. But he is traumatized, and currently what we know is that he is admitted in a hospital in Abuja.
We are so glad that he is back safely. No, it's going to be a long journey for him. What are conditions like overall for Catholics in Nigeria right now?
There are conditions of concern. The Archbishop that you mentioned earlier has been very vocal about these cases. And it's about Boko Haram that have been making targeted attacks. And this insecurity has been further complicated by a predominantly Muslim herdsmen who are called the Fulani. They have now borne the name of Fulani militia. They are predominantly Muslim, and they are frequently clashing with Christian farmers over grazing land. And the event of the end of last month, specifically on the 28th of November, when at least, according to reports, 110 people of the Christian farmers within Borno State were killed. And that followed, in October, when 22 farmers were also killed. And all these are Christians who are being targeted. And so it's a question of concern. The Archbishop has been appealing to the government to be honest and decisive. And recently, when he gave an address to the Aid Church in Need, he raised concerns of the extent to which the government is not honest, and appealed to Western nations that have Christian roots, to prevail over the leaders in Nigeria, the political class, to be able to intervene decisively and save lives, because he thinks that the government is not single-minded, decisive, and honest in dealing with insecurity in the country.
Well, Father, thank you so much for your time. We always appreciate it. Father Don Bosco Onyalla, Editor-in-Chief of ACI Africa. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me, Tracy. God bless.
Coming up, officials in Kentucky are asking the Supreme Court to intervene in a case involving religious schools. Federal prosecutors say they will not seek the death penalty against a man accused of killing 3 people at a Planned Parenthood clinic back in 2015. Robert Deere is also accused of wounding 9 others during the attack. Last month, a judge ordered him to take a competency exam. In California, the U.S. Supreme Court is ordering a review of the state's restrictions on churches. It follows last week's ruling in favor of the Brooklyn Diocese challenge to New York's limits on church attendance. Today, the High Court ordered a lower court to re-examine California's rules. And in Kentucky, a Christian school and the state's attorney general are asking the Supreme Court to intervene and allow in-person classes for grades K through 12 at faith-based schools. Danville Christian Academy and Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron argue that the state's Democratic governor has treated religious schools less favorably than secular gatherings. Roger Byron, Senior Counsel at First Liberty Institute, joins me now on Skype. First Liberty is representing Danville Christian Academy in the lawsuit. Roger, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on. Let's talk a little bit more about what's going on there in Kentucky. As I understand, back in November, the governor ordered all schools K through 12, including Danville Christian Academy, to halt in-person classes, yet allowed preschools as well as colleges and universities to stay open for in-person instruction. Where do things stand right now?
No, that's exactly right. The First Amendment, to give a little background, requires governments generally to treat religious gatherings with the same favor that it treats any other gatherings. And in the COVID-19 context, it means that a government can almost never place a restriction on a religious gathering that doesn't place on other gatherings. And other gatherings are things like going to the movies, going to work, whether in an office or a factory, or attending a wedding. But in Kentucky, almost everything is allowed to be in person, except that, as you've said, K through 12 religious schools have been closed.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit more about your client, Danville Christian Academy. What steps have they taken to ensure the safety of their students, and how is all this affecting them?
Well, Danville Christian is first and foremost a religious organization. Their primary mission is to help its students grow closer to Jesus Christ. And Danville Christian has a sincere belief that in order to do that, it must provide a communal, in-person environment for its students.
I know that you've asked the Supreme Court to intervene. Can you update us on that?
Certainly. We've filed an emergency application with the U.S. Supreme Court, and we're currently waiting on a response from the governor's office, and we hope to get a decision very soon.
And Roger, what do you think is at stake here in terms of religious freedom?
Well, anytime you have the First Amendment challenged, or First Amendment rights challenged, the First Amendment becomes weaker unless the First Amendment is enforced, just a little weaker every time. And in this instance, currently in Kentucky, a group of people can go out to a wedding together. They could go to the gym and work out together. They could attend a basketball game at the University of Kentucky together with thousands of other people. They could even go out and get a tattoo, or they could go to the indoor gambling slots at the horse tracks. They are not allowed to gather in person at a private religious school for a Bible class. That is not in keeping with the First Amendment. That does not meet the requirements of the First Amendment.
Well, Roger, we do hope that you keep us posted on the case. Roger Byron, Senior Counsel at First Liberty Institute, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Tonight on EWTN ProLife Weekly, we hear what one pro-life group is hoping to see from the U.S. bishops when it comes to Presumptive President-elect Joe Biden's abortion agenda.
We expect bishops to stand firm in making clear that Joe Biden's belief and support for abortion are simply incompatible with Catholicism and what our catechism teaches us.
Prudence Robertson from the Susan B. Anthony list also reacts to possible Health and Human Services appointments. That's tonight on EWTN ProLife Weekly at 10 p.m. Eastern. Up next, a closer look at a new book by Australian Cardinal George Pell on his more than 400 days in prison before his conviction was overturned. Cardinal George Pell is writing a series of books about his time in prison. The Vatican's former financial chief spent more than 400 days in an Australian jail after being convicted of child sexual abuse. The conviction was overturned last April following an appeal to the country's highest court. The first volume of Prison Journal will be released later this month. In it, the 79-year-old recounts the 5 months that he spent in solitary confinement. Ed Pettin is Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register, and he was one of the first journalists to speak with the Cardinal. And Ed joins us now. Thanks so much for coming on. Could you give us a sense, Ed, of what the books will cover and what the Cardinal hopes to achieve by publishing them?
Sure, Tracy. Well, the book covers the first 5 months of his incarceration from February 2019, when he was reprimanded in custody, up until July last year, which is a month just before the failure of his first appeal. The 3 volumes, of course, cover the whole of his imprisonment, from which amounted to about 404 days. Now, he said he wanted to publish these journals because really to show the importance of Christianity in this sort of situation, how it helped him, and also to help those in similar difficult situations, those who are being persecuted. But also he wanted to sort of show those in Australia as well that this sort of thing shouldn't happen again, and if it does, this is the way to handle it, as it were. So there's been there was a lot of concern about the justice system in Australia, and so I think he wanted it to be a sort of testimony to fight that if such a situation happens again.
I know in your interview with him, Cardinal Pell discussed a number of topics, including how he coped with being falsely imprisoned. As you mentioned, what general attitude did he take about it?
Yes, well, first of all, his faith helped him very much. He said it helped him get through it and to cope with the suffering. But he was also very supported by the letters of support from many people that came in, 4,000 letters of support, he said, but also the support of the intercession, rather, of saints. He prayed especially to St. Thomas More. He has a great devotion to St. Thomas More and other saints who sort of underwent a similar situation. And also through reading books as well. I think that was another source of support for him. So those were the sort of main elements that he drew upon to get him through this.
And what other interesting reflections did he share with you about his time in prison and in the journal itself?
Well, he talked about, interestingly, some locutions that a woman got through Our Lady, who actually sort of said that he was being incarcerated because of his uncovering of financial corruption in the Vatican. Now, he says he's taken a very skeptical view of this, but he doesn't dismiss it entirely. And of course, we have since heard that there are possible allegations that there were connections in the Vatican and his false imprisonment. But there are other aspects too which are interesting. He says he wholeheartedly forgives his accuser. He feels actually very sorry for him and his very much disadvantaged life and the life that he's had, and so he has quite a lot of compassion for him. And also he also has an interesting reflection on the need for protocols for resigning popes. This is something he thought about in his time in prison. And he said that's important because he feels that it's important for unity, that if they're going to be resigning popes in the future, that there are clear guidelines about how they must live once they resign from the office of the Supreme Pontiff.
Quickly, do we know when the other 2 volumes will be published?
We don't know the exact dates, Tracy, but the Ignatius Press, the publishers, are publishing excerpts over the next 58 weeks of all the journal from all 3 volumes. And so if you want to, you can sign up and subscribe to that on the Ignatius Press website and get these installments every week for the next 58 weeks.
Ed, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Edward Pettin, Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register. Thanks again, Ed.
Thank you, Tracy.
And finally tonight, more from today's special ceremony at the White House, where Lou Holtz, former football coach at the University of Notre Dame, was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Holtz led the Fighting Irish to the 1988 national title. He coached at 5 other colleges and was briefly the head coach of the New York Jets. The 83-year-old practicing Catholic says he has 3 rules: do the right thing, do the best you can, and always show people you care. The Medal of Freedom is the highest honor given to a civilian. And congratulations to Coach Holtz. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.